Welcome to the Young Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Malina, and I'm super excited to bring you this podcast where we explore the journeys and advice of successful leaders. Today's guest has a true self-made success story. From growing up in poverty to becoming a serial entrepreneur, he's built an incredible career through grit, determination, and vision. He's turned his challenges into opportunities and achieved great success. Get ready to be inspired by the journey of Sean Frost. Welcome to the Young Leaders Podcast, Sean. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How about yourself?
I am doing amazing. Well, we're going to start off with a mystery question that was left from our previous guest. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, the question is, what kind of impact are you hoping to leave on the world? And what are the steps you are taking right now to achieve that?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. That's a good one. So, for me, it's relatively clear at this stage in my life. So I'm on a little bit of a legacy tour, a legacy push right now. So in terms of impact, I don't know whether it's a pride thing, an ego thing, but I do have this, I guess you could say, infatuation with leaving a legacy, leaving something bigger than myself. So I do recognize and acknowledge that I want to leave an impact. I want to be remembered. I don't want to be forgotten. So I am grinding as hard as I possibly can, not just for myself and my family, but really for my community. So it's kind of a multifaceted approach that I'm doing. I am a custom home builder, so I do have some land out in the Almonte area where I'm going to be basically building almost a street in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And of course, bricks and mortar, that is going to stay for many, many years to come, decades to follow. So that's one thing. The other thing is I'm very active in the community. I partner with Atletico Ottawa, the soccer club here in Ottawa. So I do a ton of community events and community work with the club, outreach through Boys and Girls Club, Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, Canadian Blood Services. Those are just a few of the entities that I work with, but that's an impact I'm trying to leave amongst the youth and empowering the community through soccer. And then on the flip side, I'm also partnered with CHIO, which is the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario. So I'm trying to kind of do whatever I can in that regard to, again, leave an impact that hopefully, even if people aren't necessarily remembering my name through that, if it's a program or something that's going to be helping generations to come, especially, sick kids, that's something that I really want to be involved with.
That's amazing. I want to donate to sick kids. I'm not sure if you've seen, but my goal is to raise $1.5 million and donate it to Sick Kids Hospital because they helped my sister when she had a higher fever than usual. Local hospitals weren't able to do anything, and they were able to help. I just always think about how they are helping and can help so many other children. So could you talk a little bit about your story on how you started and where you are now?
Yeah, for sure. So I originally born in Ottawa, Ontario. Quickly, as an infant, my parents moved down to Florida. And within a couple of years, a few things went down, decided that it wasn't working. So my mom ended up bringing me back up to Ottawa. My dad ended up following shortly thereafter, but my parents split. With truth be told, an absolute blessing that happened. And it's a funny thing to say because I'm very, very close with both my parents. But it allowed me the opportunity to kind of get to know each one of my parents as an individual and separately. When you have parents that are together, I don't know per se, but I do know in the sense that now I am a parent and I do have my wife and I are together, but it's a very cool dynamic. I can speak from the other side. So it was a very cool dynamic to be able to get to know both my parents as to who they were as individuals and grow with them that way. So, I grew up in lower income neighborhood, subsidized housing and daycare. My mom and I against the world, and she actually worked at the Ottawa Hospital. She had a valued position. She worked with radiologists. She was kind of like the mom of the radiologists, their admin, and very well respected. So I was able to learn, a work ethic and working with integrity. A lot of good qualities from my mom. And then on my dad's side, he's always been a go-getter. He's a hustler through and through, always trying to improve his position, strive for more, and wasn't afraid of failing, wasn't afraid to take on new challenges. And if they didn't work, then he'd close the door and then move on to the next one. So I was able to kind of adopt all those ideologies from both of them. And I kind of ran with it. Went to school in Ottawa, started my first music production company while I was in high school. I was making music, selling beats. I had representation, and started to kind of make a name for myself. Started working down in Kansas City with artists down there that I connected with and had a good bond with. All while still continuing my education and going to Carleton University back in Ottawa. So I wasn't actually really attending classes, but I was still enrolled and getting papers done and whatnot from abroad. And then from there, I just, the studio that I worked at ended up, getting cleaned out, is the nicest way to say it. And I was back in Ottawa finishing my exams. So I decided, listen, like it's time to quote unquote grow up. I got a paper job, a paper trail job, I should say, working at the Ottawa Hospital in patient care, which was something that I was interested in, but I knew that it wasn't going to be my career. And then I cashed out the music money into the construction field. So I actually started a general contracting company with a partner, a close friend of mine who is a general contractor. English is a second language for him. So he thought that I would be able to bring value on the front end in terms of sales and bringing in jobs and kind of running the business side of that. And then, yeah, that was kind of the start of, I don't want to say my entrepreneurial life because it was from the music production, but that's kind of where I started developing as an entrepreneur and realizing and recognizing that there was something more for me out there and something bigger that I had to chase down.
Wow, that was amazing. And how exactly did you start your business? Especially being in high school, I'm in high school as well. So how did you start that?
Yeah, great question. So it's, obviously what I did then isn't what I would be doing now, but you have to start somewhere. And I think that's something that people get hung up on is it's really hard to start. It's so easy to talk about something. It's really hard to actually start doing it. And then when you do get around to starting to do it, like to make things happen, we overthink it. We overanalyze. We're trying to figure out what we're missing. Whereas like sometimes you just have to jump in and test it out. So back then, I'm dating myself, but this is a long time ago. And, I started obviously, from business cards to websites, separate business phone line, obviously a professional email, and like building out that site. And of course the product was easy because I was the composer, I'm the creator, I'm the producer. So I could create the music, upload it there. And then at the time, we like obviously Facebook was around, but like it was still early days of other social medias. Like we still had MySpace at the time. So I had a MySpace account, which was, yeah, I know I can recognize on your face, but basically it was a profile page. So you would have photos, you would have your music up. People would be able to basically lease music, purchase music, read your bio. It was basically like a modern day EPK, like electronic press kit. That's essentially what it was with a domain space. And so yeah, just kind of built it out then. And then it was networking. It was pounding the pavement. Back then there was more brick and mortar for music. So I had deals with HMV, which at the time was a big, like basically the biggest music distributor across Canada for physical music. And yeah, I did events and I got creative in the events. I would host event spaces and, basically charge at the door, but then you would get free product when you came in. So then I was making money on people attending the event, but they were all getting value on the return when they were leaving. So really they were paying for the product and coming to a free event, but I just repurposed it. So it was saying, pay for the ticket and the event, and then you're getting free product. And people were going, and then I would build a bigger fan base, build a bigger sphere of influence, so on and so forth.
Wow, that's so cool. And then what about the importance of having a growth mindset, especially during going through like moving and like everything that you've been through? Why is it important to have a growth mindset and how did it help you?
So I have two minds on this. So on one side, on the growth mindset, it's I feel that it's important to never be complacent and get too comfortable, right? When we stand still, when we stop growing, we die. So I do value the importance of wanting to grow, but that's the idea of growth differs from different people, and also in my eyes in different ways. So growth can go to scaling, but it can also go into the product that you're releasing or what the business entails. So it doesn't have to necessarily grow. Like growth doesn't necessarily mean revenue or larger numbers or more sales. It could be, expansion of what you're working on or expansion of the idea that you originally started with. All of that to me is growth. And the reason I say that is because I have certain businesses right now where I'm not focused on growth in certain aspects. For example, we'll get into this, I'm sure after, but from that general contracting company that I started, that ended up being my first rock bottom where that led me down to. So, but to fast forward past that, when I started my first real estate team, right now I'm currently comfortable where I only hire individuals that I already know ahead of time, I trust ahead of time, and I like ahead of time. I'm not interested in scaling and bringing on outside agents that I don't have a relationship prior. Yes, it could potentially bring me more money, likely would, but there's a whole bag of issues that could come along with that. So I'm not interested in growth and scaling in that regard. In terms of personal production, of course, I'm always interested in growth and scaling and trying to do better. But with that, it's not necessarily my work ethic because I'm already giving everything that I've got. But it might be trying new tactics, bringing on another admin or new avenues or new technologies that can help me bring in more business. So in that terms of growth, I'm fully supportive of. But I do think that it has to be recognized, what's your idea of success and like, what are you looking to do? Because the growth mindset, it can take you down scary paths if you're focused solely on certain things. Like if you're only focused on the monetary value and like, listen, I want to make a bag. Like I want to just keep making more and more money. And like, I'll do anything I can do to get there. Well, once you get to my age, then that might affect how you sleep and how you live the rest of your days, like your daily life, right? Where I need to have that balance where like I'm working really hard, but I also have the financial freedom and more importantly, the time freedom that I can do what I want when I want. And for me, that's way more important than scaling and making more money. It's like, how can I live the best quality of life that I possibly can?
Amazing. And what were some of the biggest failures that you've been through?
Yeah, so this is a good one. So I've had a couple personal rock bottoms, which from the outside looking in wouldn't appear to be big issues, but that's the important thing about life is that we're all going through something at some point all the time, and we never know what somebody's going through, right? So I started this general contracting company with a colleague of mine, one of my best friends, and we were running and it was going okay. We were getting jobs, we were making some money, but I absolutely, positively to my core hated it. I hated the job. I felt like I was basically a slave to my phone. I felt that we were going above and beyond on every job that we were doing. And we were pretty young at the time. Like we were early 20s, like really doing it. And I felt that clients were trying to take advantage of us based on our age and inexperience. I felt that no matter what we did, how far above and beyond we went, how far we bent over to try to make things work and make people happy, they weren't. We weren't getting any gratitude. Basically everything that we were giving, we weren't receiving anything. And I felt that we were giving in abundance and we were receiving absolutely nothing except for negativity. And it was starting to affect my mental. I was, I just wasn't happy. I wasn't going to bed feeling good. I wasn't waking up excited, and I went through that for quite a while. And then I started to have that, that's perfect storm in my mind of being like, listen, I got to get out of this. But now I'm actually also co-supporting a good friend of mine who is relying on me in this business. So if I step out of it, like what's going to happen to him and his life? Am I letting him down? I feel like I am. What's he going to do? So I had that turmoil, that constant turmoil day by day. Like I can't keep doing this, but I can't let my friend down. What do I do? So then eventually it did come to come to a head where I just woke up. I called him and I was like, listen, bro, like I can't do this anymore. I'm unhappy. I hate this. I don't need the money. I was still working at the Ottawa hospital. I'm a firm believer in like making something to a point where like you'll never need to look back before leaving what you already have. I never quit something and then jump into something new without having my bases covered, because then you're starting to focus on things from a money side, like making sure that it can pay the bills. And I have a belief that that's not how you should be starting a business. You should be starting from a place of passion and a want of creating something and being successful with it, not in terms of like getting a ton of money and paying your bills right away. It's putting too much pressure on that new business and you're not going to give it the proper chance to grow, in my opinion. So anyway, I told him this. He was like, okay, that's it, bro. Don't worry. I'm glad you told me how you feel. When do you want to shut the doors? And I'm like, as soon as we get off this call, like I don't want to do this ever again. Like I'm good. So he's like, okay, well, if that's how it's going to be, I'm like, listen, we just finished our last 2 jobs. We're good. This is the perfect time to just cut ties. So he agreed and we did. And I went through so that was like months and months and months of me feeling that way. And, as soon as I had that call, got off the phone, like I just felt like £1,000,000 had been, lifted off my shoulders and off my chest. And, I was kind of back to square one because I was still working at the Ottawa hospital. I really liked the job, but I knew it wasn't a career. And, so I did feel stuck. I felt that I didn't know what was next, but I also did feel relief, which outweighed the feeling of being stuck. So from there, it was still a few months of, I don't want to say full blown depression, but it was definitely, a struggle to figure out what the next step was. And luckily I had another one of my best friends who was a realtor, and he just said, bro, like you need to get into real estate. You will absolutely devour it, and you will never look back. And I took his advice. I'm a firm believer in continued education, no matter what that is. So I think doing the research is important. So whether that's through an institution like a college or university, whether it's through online courses, whether it's through self-learning, whether it's through apprenticeship, I think it's important to get the experience and to continue learning before just jumping both feet in without having any prior knowledge to anything. Because then you're not really giving yourself a fair chance to succeed. It's not to say that you won't succeed. It's just you're already behind the gun to start with. So I was like, listen, I'm going to take the courses. What do I have to lose? So I blew through the courses, and literally as soon as I got licensed, my first showing, I put in an offer, and I hit the ground running. And it's been 8 years, and my whole life has transformed from there, and I've been able to start multiple businesses after that point.
Well, that's amazing. It's kind of reminds me of what my dad tells me as well. He says that if you're not going to enjoy what you're doing, then there's no point of doing it, especially if you're just going to go after the money, which is what some people do. And then when they aren't getting that same amount of money, then they don't know what to do. And so my dad says, always go for the passion before you go for the money, because that will come by itself. As long as you love what you're doing, then that's all that matters. There's like an infinite amount of things that you can actually learn. And who knows that out of those infinite, like you can find one thing that really connects with you. My dad also talks about it doesn't matter about your age, that you should always be learning. You can learn from someone older than you can learn from someone younger than you. It doesn't matter.
Well, your dad's 100% correct. So yeah, it couldn't be said better. He's exactly 100% on point there.
Thank you. What do you think are some of the most important skills that people should learn before starting either a business or getting to the career that they want or the job that they want? What's been like the most important skill?
One of them would definitely be to don't be afraid to fall forward. So I think, especially with how things are today, perception is so important to a lot of people, right? And those are external perceptions. So I mean, like sphere of influence is probably the biggest. So it's amongst like, if you're looking to start something, oftentimes people think of like, okay, listen, because you're starting from scratch, right? If you're starting something, you're creating something. So then you're thinking, okay, if I'm going to be a professional at this, I'm going to be an expert at this. So as soon as I come out with something, my friends, my family are all going to be seeing this, right? And they're going to be like, okay, I'm coming out with this business and I'm acting like I am the professional at it, or that I know what I'm talking about. Like I'm an expert, right? Otherwise, what are you doing? So your friends, people are worried about friends being like, who does so-and-so think they are? talking about this or doing this, or where did this come from, or they don't know anything about this, or I know more about this than they do, right? Like there's a lot of insecurities, there's a lot of things that can come up, and same thing through family. So a lot of people have that fear of failure before they even start. And that's not even counting the external masses outside of your sphere of influence. So the thing about the thing that I've never had an issue with, that I've been super, 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 super blessed with, is that I do have a very, very strong self belief. I've just been, I don't know where it came from, but I've always had the notion that if something doesn't work out for me, it's because it wasn't meant for me. And what is meant for me will happen for me, and it will work out, because I already know that I'm always putting in the work effort and the work ethic that needs to be there to succeed and to make something work. So if something doesn't work, I don't put it on an external excuse. I don't blame it on anybody else. I always put it on my shoulders, but I do the same thing when I win. When I succeed at something, then I know, okay, you know what? Like, that's not to say I did it all alone, but I can still take the satisfaction and the pride knowing I made this happen. I did this. So I think like the fear of failure, like, and failure is such a loose term, but like people are afraid to even start and afraid to try because they're worried that it's not going to work out. And then how are people going to look at them and talk about them if it doesn't work? And I think that's the thing is, in my mind's eye, failure is only if you decide that if you're really giving up and then not trying again. That's the failure. If you start a business or try something and it doesn't work out, but you take lessons from that and you're like, listen, this is why this didn't work out. And it also wasn't really for me, but this is what I learned from it. I'm going to start, and it could be down the road. It doesn't have to be the next day, but like you find a new passion and then you're like, listen, I'm going to embark on this journey. I've already tasted defeat once before. I already know what to expect there. I'm not afraid of it. I'm going to start this new entity, this new job, this new career, and I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to adopt all the lessons that I learned from the other one that didn't work. I'm going to apply them to this one and then see where it goes. And you just keep doing that. And if you find yourself in the right path, you're just going to keep pushing forward anyway and finding solutions. And if you're not in the right path, the same thing might happen, but you're going to learn even more. So then the next time you try it, you're so far ahead of the game. And eventually you're going to succeed in whatever you want to do. And the things that you were calling failures before was basically just continued education. Because if you hadn't tried those steps and learned those lessons at those times, you wouldn't have been able to apply them to the one that did end, like that ended up working. So you can't really call it a failure if it actually ended up being a key cog in the wheel that got you to where you needed to get to in the end. And also, from the music production, when I cashed out when the studio got robbed, I now represent two artists, one of them being signed with Sony Columbia out in the States, who's been living in LA for the last 3 years. I just got back from a US tour across the whole States with one stop in Toronto, living out my dream and continuing to do so. So that like quote unquote failed music career that didn't work then, I'm fully immersed, and I split half my professional life in that same life now, on an elevated level that I never would have been able to achieve if I hadn't have gone through that back then.
That's amazing. Yeah, like failure, the only way you can succeed, which end up being those stepping stones. You can't have the success that you want without actually going up the stairs. And each of those stairs is either a failure or something that went right or something that went wrong. Each of it builds up the person that you become today. Before we end off, could you leave a mystery question for our next guest?
A mystery question for our next guest. I would say, it's going to be kind of similar to one of the questions that you asked before, but I would say if you had 3 takeaways for a young entrepreneur, or even somebody that's not necessarily knows that they want to be an entrepreneur yet, but if you have 3 takeaways, 3 points that somebody could apply to help them get unstuck or create a new business, what would those 3 things be? So it would be, maybe tips or tricks, like any 3 points of advice to help somebody, whether it's a mindset thing, an energy thing, a way to start a business proposal or a business plan, like whatever that may be, but give 3 points.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sean. I loved this conversation. I enjoyed it, and I think I learned a lot, and I hope our viewers learned and enjoyed this conversation as much as I did.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on.